Right. I don't think... Oh, not installed. Never mind. So, welcome to today. The main event, if you like, of today is going to be getting this computer to work. Great. Thank you. Okay. Is Dr. Paul Bowyer, who's that chap who just went out. A lot of our clinics donate blood and tissue and other samples and cooperate with us in our research. And Paul is the head of what we do with all those materials. So he's going to come and give us feedback on what they've been doing and the advances in research that, with your help, we've managed to do. Which at the moment, the speed of research and the speed of progress is quite quick, so I'm quite looking forward to hearing what he says. He's coming back at 2:30, mainly because he can't figure out a way to give me the slides that he needs to show and get it on this machine. So, as you see, the original plan was to have him on second, but he turned up early, so he's going to have to wait anyway now. First things first is the support team. Search for content. Is the support team, which is myself. I do believe that's working. Which is myself, Graham Atherton. I work for the National Aspergillosis Centre. There's Rachel, who also works with us as part of our team, and Beth over there, who I think you've already met as well. Okay. And they're going to contribute their bits to this. At the moment that I will decide with my slides. We'll also have Chris Harris, who is the centre manager, coming down. Usually comes down in about half an hour, and she's also got a few things to tell us. Okay. So, on to the little bits I had to talk about. Now, normally this would be the second half of the meeting after the speaker. So these are all bits of news that have happened over the last month, and I'm updating you on what's happened since the last time we were here, or maybe there's some new things to talk about. This is something that's happening in early February, which we talked about last time, and our plans have progressed somewhat. And what is actually going to happen is that this is actually the first Friday of February next year. So this is what's happening instead of a meeting here, and the meeting will be in Lisbon in Portugal. We've established we're unlikely to get people from Manchester or UK really to fly over to Portugal. So what we're planning on doing with Professor Denning is Portugal needs a patient support network. We've got one here in the UK, and this is part of it. So we're going to try and set one up in Portugal for Portuguese people, and hopefully to help out Portuguese medics who also need help and advice on the management of aspergillosis and its diagnosis. We're hopefully going to go over there and each give a talk on different aspects of our jobs with the National Aspergillosis Centre, and we may have one or two invited speakers. This is a conference which is it's not the only one now actually, but is by far the biggest conference dedicated to aspergillosis anywhere in the world. So every expert in the world is coming to Lisbon to talk about aspergillosis, and we'll get one or two of those to come and talk to us in this meeting as well. So we think it's similar to what happened in Manchester 2 years ago. So we think that's quite a reasonable idea. We were going to ask you guys if you had any thought, considering that this is a country that has no support group at the moment, what sort of subjects, what sort of topics perhaps do you think would be most useful for us to present to a population like this who clearly have had nothing like this before? So if you've got any comments or questions, you can raise it with me or one of the guys.
Are you planning to link up the group to the conference?
Yes, so it will happen at the same time as the conference. Yeah. We're thinking the night before the first event. So most people fly in the previous afternoon, and we have, if we hold the group, which will be a social event, as well as some talks, late that afternoon and early evening, then everyone will be there, and we should be able to get a few experts in to come and talk to the patients and the carers, as well as us just doing it.
The proceeding of the conference will be in English, is it?
It's going to have to be in English. None of us speak Portuguese, but we have got 4 or 5 Portuguese patients that come to the centre. So we're having to think of some way that we can provide the translation, attract people who aren't English speakers. Somehow we don't know how to do that yet. It will be recorded like this, so people will be able to see it after the day as well.
What would be interesting is for this group to share their experience of how aspergillosis is managed here
Yes.
in the UK,
Yes.
and their fellow colleagues in Portugal,
Yes.
and to share their experience.
Yes.
And if there's a platform where they can share.
So it'd be nice if 1 or 2 people came over with us to give their side.
Maybe just link up using Skype.
Or do a Skype. Yes, that's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Just Skype, whether that can be arranged. Is that
It can be, yeah.
something?
The rooms, we know the rooms are fully IT enabled. So we're trying to talk David into paying for us to go on a recce trip, Christmas time, or and I doubt if that's going to happen. So it's we've done this at conference centres before, and they are pretty good with internet and cameras and the like. So we will take some equipment over. But yeah, I think that's a good idea. We have people Skyping in. I'm trying to get people, because we're a national service, we're so widely spread, not many people can come to this meeting. So I'm trying to increase the use of Skype. It's part of the reason why we are streaming this, is to try and bring it to as many people outside of here as we can. We're just starting to be able to accept questions coming in from everybody who's watching on the Facebook page that we've set up for this. They can ask questions with text, which we think is probably the easiest way to achieve our aims of making sure that people who are listening can actually ask the speaker questions in real time, or maybe just ask questions that we can reply. And Rachel and Beth are going to be manning the computers to do that. We haven't been able to do that for a while because I've been on my own. So I either speak or I type. You can't do both at the same time. So hopefully that will. It was popular when we first started doing it. We used to get half a dozen people. We even had people joining in the Christmas quiz online, which was quite good, which might be good next time. And Skype does work. Well, this link is very reliable. We tried Skype, so we've had Skype coming up here, and people appearing who are in their own homes, and then we switch the cameras around and they can join in the break time. And we had maybe 4 people, but they've all disappeared by half time, so they haven't hung around long enough to justify us going to all the hassle of screening it via Skype. This goes onto a Facebook page and is seen by several hundred people, which is a bigger impact than 4 people on Skype. So I think this is the way to get to more people than we were before. And it's a good idea. We think we should try and do that in Portugal. Yeah, great. Okay. I'm going to try and reach out to the doctors of the patients. I'm not sure how, this is what Professor Denning wants us to do. And I'm not sure that combining the two is going to be very easy. It may be better to have a separate session for doctors to come to, but anyway, that's by the by. Right. That's happening in February. This happened last week. If you noticed, if you go to the Manchester Science Museum, there was a festival going on for half-term week. I went to it with my little boy, and there was a fungus event, and many members of our staff went. I think Azad at the back went.
Yeah.
In fact, I can prove that Azad went.
You don't show any picture, please.
Yeah, there you go. Where is he? There he is. Is it Azad? And this is Lily, who came from our, who's come from, also works for the centre. It was set up in one of the old engine sheds by the look of it. What they were actually doing, I mean, Azad can probably explain it better than me, but they set up a game, an event. So there was a real patient with something wrong with them. I don't think it was the thing that was wrong. They were pretending to have something wrong with them. And then teams of members of the public were going to try and diagnose what was wrong with this person, which sounds quite intense. It sounds quite hard, but the feedback, the overall rating was nearly 9 out of 10. People actually really enjoyed doing that, which was really great. The mean time, so the average time that each team played the game was 42 minutes, which is quite amazing. When I go to one of these things, if I can get my family to pay attention for longer than 42 seconds, I've done well. So that is really good. 38 teams, 106 individuals throughout the day. It was just held for one day, and I missed it because I went on a different day. Not for any particular reason. So it was really good. Loads of positive comments, most saying it was fun. So whoever set it up, and I think it was a university.
Yes, it was Elaine.
Part of the Manchester Fungal Infection Group, of which we're part. There's another big part of the group that do lots of research at the university, and we're all part of that one group, and they ran this event as Elaine Bignall, which is great. I think they also had an exhibition. Was it the Fungal Kingdom exhibition was running with it?
They had parallel sessions for different activities like Play-Dohs, doing all sorts of fungals, identification, histology section. Right. They had games, video games, where combating fungal infection, and the kids really enjoying it.
So that was good.
Yeah, it was fun.
That was Fungal Kingdom, something we contributed to in 2010, 2012, and it ran in Edinburgh for months, and it's since been going. It was meant to be going around the world. They had dates in New York and Paris and a few other places. I think it's been to Cardiff mostly, but it has seemingly it's going around and doing single day events, which is a really good idea. We contributed all the radiology, all the X-rays and things like that they all look at. So that was good. That was worth having. One of the good things is meeting up with real researchers, and we also several of our junior doctors went as well, interactively, and a patient. So that apparently there's only one. We asked someone to come and play at being a patient for a change. The winners scored over 1,000 points, and it looks like you won by being the fastest to get the correct diagnosis by the look of it. So that was Team McCann won, Team Awesome coming second. I think that was what it was. So that was worth doing. This is our infectious disease lead, Rena. I don't know who the other person is. She's from the university. Rena has actually spoken here a couple of times, which you may have seen her. Lily, Azad. Malcolm, you probably know, he's also spoken here several times. So that was great fun. So that was worth doing, just reporting that back to you. Now, something that we set up recently, which you might like to get involved in, but just to show you what's new and what's come on the internet for us recently, somebody has set up this thing called an Aspergillosis map. I didn't set it up. It's someone called diseasemaps.org. They've done it for several diseases, and quite coincidentally, they had set one up for aspergillosis. They provide a whole series of other activities to do, but mainly I'm interested in mapping out where everybody is in the world that's got aspergillosis. And we've posted this up on our Facebook page for the last month or so, and 106 people have put their location into it. So we're starting to get a picture where everybody is in the world that's got Aspergillosis, which is quite interesting. You can also add in institutes. So I think that arrow there is us. There's probably there's 108 people there. Quite a lot of them in the UK. You might expect that this is where the main world centre is, so we've identified more people there than anywhere else. All around the coast of the US, there are people, which you might expect, but we're also picking up people in Africa, India, northern India, that might even be Pakistan, I'm not sure, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, so that absolutely everywhere. And the more we get, the clearer picture we'll get of the distribution of Aspergillosis across the world. It's not just us, it's all over the world. Clearly we've got South America and Africa, not so many people registering, I guess, in the group because they can't get on the internet so easily. So that's kind of a fun thing. That's slowly accumulating members, just to let you know that that's there. If you haven't registered yourself, it might be fun to go there and register. You can get the links from this from our Facebook pages and from the Aspergillosis website. That's quite fun. Okay. Over to Beth.
So one of the things that we kind of skirted around the edge of on the previous group was people had little really practical tips to help. Just little practical tips that just made their life easier in some way. So if anybody has any of those sort of things that you wish somebody had told me when you were first diagnosed, and you just think that would just make that job a bit easier. So we're going to try and collect loads and loads. So I've only put 2 on here so far. Blogging, people seem to be getting quite a lot out of. And the other one is about PIP forms. Somebody on the Facebook group asked for a bit of guidance on how to fill those out. And there's actually a couple of really good guides out there, but until you know to look for them, you might not know what you're looking for exactly. So what I'd like to do is fill every single one of these circles with just a little useful just morsel, and then that can be a resource that we can sort of take with us and hopefully help a few people. And then accompanying it, there'll be sort of a big list of links to take people straight to resources that they might find helpful.
Okay.
What is the objective of this exercise? What's the objective?
To try and transfer a bit of useful practical knowledge from people that have had the disease for a while and sort of gotten into a bit of a sort of a routine, to transfer some of that to newly diagnosed people, or just anything that people come across that they think.
So this is information from patients to patients?
Yes. Yeah.
Is there any oversight to check if that information is of any value? Because if somebody's experience is transferred to another person, but whether that other person should take it as a face value.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a judgment call.
Yeah.
It would be a sort of a case by case basis. Yeah, I mean hopefully we're going to get quite a lot of things. So it might be that only a few of them are really useful to them. But if we put a lot in, people can pick out what they want, or they can just think, oh, I never thought of doing it that way. They can give things a try.
So this is probably going to be maybe 50 different pages on our website.
Yeah, it'll all sort of link through to the different resources that people suggest.
Yeah.
So I'll be following the Facebook group, trying to glean little bits to put in, and if anybody's got anything else that they would like to sort of share.
I guess some of them won't have to be links though, will they? They could be things that you've found in your daily life that
Yeah.
helpful. We were just having a conversation right before about gardening, so maybe if there was something around that, or just anything really that you feel like would be helpful to someone who was going there.
Yeah. So not clinical stuff, more sort of
Yeah.
sort of like lifestyle, day-to-day stuff. Yeah. That's what that would be.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Oh yes, you're next.
Yes, I am. I'm just going to get some of these out. So, oops. At the last meeting, there was a bit of a discussion at the end of it about how we could make the patient website a little bit more clearer and what would be most useful to patients really, because although Graham's been working at this and at these kind of groups and communities for a long, long time, we're not patients, so your opinion is really, really important to us. So what I've been thinking about more and more since I've started here is making information accessible to everyone. And I know in this group there's perhaps not the most representative sample because you're all quite well informed about the disease. But I've basically made this what I call an infographic. It's just a visual representation of some of the most common types of aspergillosis. And it would really mean a lot to me if you'd be able to just have a look at this, maybe in the break, and jot some notes down as to what you thought on here was helpful, or if there's any parts that you think might be changing, or any other thoughts you have really. So I'll just hand those out, and feel free to look at them in your leisure. And let me know what you think towards the end of the meeting.
Share if you like.
Yeah,
You've got
okay.
to.
Okay, so both of these things are designed to make our patient's website more interesting to patients, make it more relevant to the patients. We at the moment we have a lot of information which describes the condition in lots and lots of words. This infographic describes each condition in a couple of sentences, which was that idea, which is, I think, is a really good idea. The other, not exactly criticism, the other suggestion we had was we need more information about basic non-research type stuff, and that's what Beth's trying to address with this. And I think if we come back when you've filled in quite a lot more of the little spores, then that will begin to show that we're trying to, if we respond to what patients have found out, we're actually giving the information that patients have generated back to patients, which is really useful for even just social support as well as informational support. So that's both of these are a response to some of the conversations we had last month.
I think as well, it's useful to think, while it's useful to patients, I think it's also useful to patients, families and relatives, because very often I think family members are keen to understand what the problem is, but it's actually quite difficult for them to grasp it. And I think having an easy way of indicating what your problem is, I think helps all round.
And we think the new patients, because we're going to redesign the patient's website, and the new one will have that on the front page, or a representation of that on the front page as the first thing people see. And then when you know what you've got, you just click on that and it'll take you to the relevant information.
GPs could do this as well, couldn't they?
Yes.
Well, that's why it's become really obvious that we have lots of patients who are more expert than their GPs, really, in aspergillosis. So getting the GPs to sort of put their egos to one side slightly and accept information from patients, I think, has already been a big thing, and hopefully will increase. The input from Beth, I think, is from Rachel with this infographic really makes that clear. GPs haven't got much time, and if someone were to put that in front of them at their desk and a badge it with the National Aspergillosis Centre, they should have time to read through that at the very least, I would have thought. So that's really good. One of the things, the PIP thing is the forms you've got to go through to claim disability benefit, and an awful lot of patients are on disability, and the government, as they probably know, the government is making it harder and harder to claim that benefit, basically. The idea, what has emerged from the Facebook group is that people are being incredibly stressed by this process of having to prove that they are ill, to prove that they are disabled in some way, which is incredibly difficult, very stressful, and all of your income is based on you being able to put over to somebody who's not your doctor that you're ill, and I think that's profoundly unfair personally. So there is help for you out there, which is what Beth's highlighting, and I think that's just one aspect of how patients have made us aware that there's a real difficulty going on, and we're going to guide them to those, or Beth's going to guide them to the help for those problems, which is a bit of practical help, which is what we talked about last month in this meeting. Okay, so I hope those are first steps, and we will carry on. Okay. Are you all right for a bit yet, Paul?
You should have email.
Okay. Right. Okay. There's a bit coming up that Chris is going to do, and she's not here yet. So I shall just carry on regardless.
Can I just ask a question on this? I mean,
You're the awkward one at the back, aren't you?
I'm just wondering if everybody here feels the same. Are you all comfortable with the level of the language used here, or whether you could actually contribute towards changing the text the way you feel probably needs more explanation or more clarification, or you need to try maybe more technical language?
Yeah, it's a good question. So is there any part on there that you feel like you don't understand, or you feel like would warrant further explanation? You don't have to answer now. Feel free to
It's
think
just
over
something
it.
to think about whether it
It's
can
a really
be.
important point, because I'd like this to be able to be understood by everyone, whether or not you've had the disease for a long time or not, or you're used to reading mental things or not. So.
Too simple.
It's too simple. I think that's probably.
That's a good thing.
Most of you probably here are more knowledgeable and more informed. So
I think it's very simple. I think if you have another piece on the side to explain more, I mean, you can go deeper and deeper, but I think it's very clear.
It's clear for someone who has never come across it before.
Yeah.
As an initial, oh, that's interesting. Like, we're more informed because we come here, don't we? So we've got more knowledge about it.
yeah. So if you rewrite this page, there are rooms for improvement. Is there room for improvement, or you are happy with the way it is? That's what I'm trying to get, because your contribution obviously makes a lot of difference for other people who are not here in this room, and their level of understanding may be quite different.
I think it's a very simple introduction.
Yeah, it's a
It's
simple
very simple
introduction
introduction.
for someone who's not come across it.
Right, for anyone who's online, there it is there's the same thing on the webpage.
So perhaps when we have this online, the titles you could click through and you could learn more, whereas this would kind of be more like a front page.
The only thing that's not on there is there's no SAFs,
Yes.
which kind of would make the page a bit too long anyway, wouldn't it? But SAFs is quite, the number of people I've seen with severe asthma, and you suggest to them they've got a fungal infection, and it's completely beyond their comprehension that could possibly be, and yet with severe asthma, more than 50% of people have got a form of aspergillosis. And that's something that the doctors should be aware of, or they should be more aware of. So, spoken in this language, we could promote that. Or is that a separate?
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason why, especially if we're going to use this primarily as an online thing, there's no reason we can't make it longer. Because it's not always going to be printed like this. And maybe just keep a printed version.
Yeah.
I think probably just an initial thought, and I'll pass some of the comments on later, but I think we probably, as a basic guide, need to start one step earlier, which is to say, what the heck is Aspergillosis? And people need to understand that it's very common, that the spores are breathed in by everybody all the time, and for most people that's fine, that the body deals with it. However, for a group of people, these things are true. Because I think that's the starting point. There needs to be a realization that we are all exposed to it all of the time.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable point. Say Aspergillosis to most people,
yeah.
and they might not understand what that is. So, yeah, thank you.
And we do have part of the patient's website, which is what is Aspergillus,
Yeah.
which is in 35 different languages or something. So this could be tacked onto that as well, or we could change the wording of that so that it's really easy to understand in 35 different languages. That would be quite a thing. That would be good.
Is the test for Aspergillus easy to do? Blood test in most GP surgeries? I mean, taking blood's easy enough, but each hospital, is it geared up to doing Aspergillus testing?
I think. Well, there are laboratories you can send your samples to in 3 or 4 different parts of the UK. There's Bristol, there's us, there's Leeds. So everyone's got access to the testing. Whether it's a standard test, it probably isn't a standard test, but maybe it should be if you've got someone with severe asthma or someone with a stubborn lung respiratory problem that has had rounds and rounds of antibiotics with no effect. What we're suggesting is it should be a routine test at that point. And we're making headway. But I think there's a surprising number of people who still wouldn't think of an aspergillosis under those circumstances. But doctors, GPs don't generally.
So one question. So are you excluding everyone with healthy lungs from ever getting aspergillosis?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
If people have absolutely healthy lungs, are they excluded from catching disease?
I think it's a lung, but it's also an immune issue. Maybe,
there are people who are resistant to most infections, and which is everyone with a chronic form of aspergillosis are resistant to almost everything, but they just get an aspergillosis type infection. Are you saying that we're only reaching those people who've already got aspergillosis? We won't be reaching people who haven't got aspergillosis, and we should be reaching those people as well?
Yeah.
That's a good point. How would we approach reaching
What kind of activities that might cause it, or the kind of places that we do, or the kind of places we visit? I noticed before on the map of the aspergillosis, it seems to be around the coast.
in America? Well, that's where most people are in America, so that's probably what.
There might be something to do with that.
I was going to try and zoom in on the UK one and see where everybody is in the UK. And probably most of them around here because the centre's here. We think.
In America,
Yeah,
Australia,
yeah.
and New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's all coastal towns.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that may not be real because Africa is full of people who are suffering from aspergillosis, and the map was clear because it's the map of people who can access internet and register.
Yes.
Yeah.
So not everybody.
So it is not everybody. So that map is
Yeah.
not.
The other thing, in Africa is an interesting place because they have more exposure to toxins produced by Aspergillus than probably anywhere else in the world. And one of the things that does is cut down their immune system, so you would expect to see more people with aspergillosis under those circumstances. And I think we do see a lot of people with TB, and a lot of those people get aspergillosis. So maybe if we could get into Africa and start to count people there, we would see hotspots in Africa, I think.
Do people in mining get it?
They tend to get something called silicosis and things from inhaling all the dust and that. Having said that, there are several cases in southern Africa where they get the deep mines, and apparently you can isolate Aspergillus from the rocks, the deep rocks. And I've read papers on it, and they called it something like geomicrobiology. And it's a study of finding microbes buried deep in rocks, weirdly enough. Now I think it's more likely you've gone down there in a mine and carried it down there, but that's not particularly clear. But yeah, you know, that is one area of study, which is interesting. Now, Chris is here, so I can carry on. We're just about to run out of time because Paul's on with his hour-long seminar.
Maybe 15 minutes.
Okay. Okay, we'll pick it up later then. Okay, so I've talked about this a couple of times. We have a patient survey once a year as part of the centre. This is what we have to do to operate our service. We have to survey our patients and ask them for any suggestions of things we're doing wrong, things that bad experiences, anything like that, as well as things that we're doing right. 100 patients completed it. We've talked about almost all of this in the last 2 months. This came up last month, which was the postal service. We operate a postal service where instead of you having to come all the way here to give tissue samples like sputum and blood, we can get your GP to send them to us, or you can do a sputum sample for us. We provide the packaging for you to be able to package up and send the samples to this centre without you having to travel. Unfortunately, we in last month, this group identified an issue with the packaging. The packaging is quite poor, and Chris has a progress on what we're doing about that problem.
Okay, so following on from that,
Which you can do on
news
microphone.
It wasn't suitable for packaging, so I've taken it back to the nurses and I've asked them to go to the company to see if they can provide a suitable package that it actually fits and fastens more easily. And going forward, we may be asking for 2 samples if people can do it, so we definitely need that packaging to be right. So someone's looking into that now. I've also asked for an instruction leaflet that's clearer, a step-by-step, because I think people get reassurance from that if they've got something to follow. It's not that people aren't capable of doing it, it's just they feel happier knowing they can go through the list and tick all the things they've done to ensure it's correct. And I think that's not been clear enough, so someone's working on that. Hopefully we'll get that changed. So that's the postal packs.
We raised it in the MDT,
yes,
the team meeting.
we did on the, well, it was the actual NAC meeting.
Yeah, and we identified the diagnostics people said they have actually received some samples that have failed because of the packaging. So it is a clinical issue.
Fasten them down with tape and things like that, but it's not meant to, it's meant to stick in and clip in and then go in the envelope, and I think that means that
we need to solve that.
Yeah, and I'm sure if the company were aware that it's not fitting properly, I'm sure they can remold it, if you like, to suit. So.
And in a size to go in the letterbox.
Yeah, just sit on it and then. So yeah, I don't know about that, but we'll bring it up because the suppliers get regular orders from us, so I think we should be able to help us out. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Should we go straight on to your next bit? Here we go.
So the other thing that was brought up was an update on our staff, who we are, what we do. And I thought rather than overload you with everybody, because we've grown so much since we first opened the centre, there's only a handful of us back then. I thought I'd not overload you, we'll just go through the nurses today and tell you who they are. So, with no particular order, but Dawn is Dawn Capey. She's your Aspergillosis specialist nurse. And she's entirely that, the Aspergillosis specialist nurse. She doesn't have any other specialty in the service. She's not been with us long, so she's probably still on a bit of a learning curve herself. She came from ICU. Plus I think she wanted better hours because she has a little girl, so she moved over to our service. So that's Dawn. Jenny, she's not been with us long either, and she's down as a specialist nurse, but she's not as high level as Dawn is. She helps in the Friday clinic, and you've probably seen her. She's part-time, so obviously can't commit as much to the service as the others do, but she's very good, very good. She does 3 days a week. So that's Jenny. Phil.
I must apologise for the appearance of Phil.
What's he creeping in there for?
I know. He was just there, so I took a photo of him.
So I don't think Phil needs any explanation, but Phil's our physiotherapist. And he's usually around in the Wednesday ABPA clinic and the Friday, and he works with Rihanna. Have you got a picture of Rihanna?
No, we haven't, no.
Rihanna works with him as well. And they also do physio generally, not just for NAC services, so he is divided up a little bit there. But he does all your nebulized antiterrorism tests and other physio advice, and he has spoken at this meeting many times and entertained us. So that's Phil.
I think this
He's
is
been with us since we opened.
this is a good moment to think of Christmas presents.
All right.
I think we should club together and buy Phil a comb. I think
Yeah.
that's definitely needed.
Pauline's our healthcare assistant. Now, poor Pauline, she's only joined us fairly recently, probably about a year. Time ticks on, it's hard to know how long people have been here. But poor Pauline has been chopped into pieces, to say the least. She was brought in to help support the Aspergillosis team, but the OPAT team robbed her for something. Instead we opened a travel clinic, which didn't succeed, unfortunately, so she got called into that. But you will see her on a Friday in clinic. She does help out in the Friday clinic, but as I say, does get pulled in all directions, and we're trying to get her in a more structured role if possible. So that's Pauline. Debbie's been with us since we opened. Need to say no more. She's one of our first nurses that we appointed. But Debbie specialises, she does Aspergillosis, as you know, but she's not doing as much now, which is why Dawn's your Aspergillosis specialist nurse full time. Debbie still does the Aspergillosis, she still comes to clinic on a Friday, but she does hepatitis. The hepatitis group are very demanding, so our time's taken up with that. As you probably know, hepatitis is often a disease related to drug users and alcohol problems and that. So she's very busy with that. She also is our only nurse prescriber, and as you know, we do home care prescriptions. So the demand on Debbie to do all the home care prescriptions is enormous. So she does extremely well to juggle all those things. So yes, that's Debbie.
She's also the least comfortable in front of the camera, as you can see.
Sarah is, again, Aspergillosis. The rumour has it, it's not official to everybody in the clinic, I don't think, although she has given my notice, but she is leaving us, so we didn't want to exclude her because she's not gone yet. There's nothing worse than the minute you give your notice, people discard you and stop telling you things and including you, so we included her. And she's our TB specialist nurse, so she's normally in the Monday clinic, although, as I say, visits the Friday clinic. And, you know, the TB clinic's still pretty busy, but she's decided she wants a bit more based work, so she will leave us work and we'll go TB nurse to replace her. So that's the main team that you'll be familiar with, but we also have an OPAT team. I haven't brought those, getting all them down for photographs would have been a challenge in itself. I'll give you that Japanese one. And we have 5 on that team at the moment. It's a busy team, but they do save lots and lots of bed days. And I think Liz has given a talk here. Liz is the lead on that team, and that team just seems to be growing and growing.
So what's the OPAT team do?
Nowhere to put them.
What do they do, the OPAT?
So they do all the IVs at home in the community, so it allows people to start some IVs in the hospital and then go home and have the rest of the IVs in the comfort of their own home without taking up bed days. And most people don't want to be in hospital for 3 weeks in one go, and of course a lot of our patients come from miles away, so that's being away from home and away from the family is not very nice for any of them. So if we can set that up, so they do mostly cellulitis and things like that within the hospital, so that's the main focus. But they do deal with our patients in terms of ambisome and microphungin, so patients that need 3 weeks of ambisome. If they can set it up locally, either at the local hospital or at home, then they do. And that's great because obviously, as I say, someone so far away, it's just not very nice to expect them to come and sit in our hospital. So they also look after those. So there's quite a few specialist nurses and then some other nurses and there's a new one just joined them, so they're going to get staffing support as well, not surprisingly. So on the basis of nurses, I have a question for you. I've got a few questions for you today, actually.
Come microphone.
So, what I wanted to know was, from a clinic perspective, what do you expect from your nurse? If you come into clinic for the first time, you've never been before, and the nurse introduces herself, what would you expect from her? Any ideas or any thoughts?
Hello.
Sweets. I'll tell them. I'll feed that back.
I suppose an overview of how the clinic works, how it's organised, and then also information about if you need to contact here outside of a clinic appointment, because you've got a question or you're not well, or if there's some materials that you need, or you think you probably need to submit a sputum sample, just the way to go about it. Because I think they're very busy. If you phone in, typically you're not going to get through.
Well, that was going to be the next question.
And that's, it's not a criticism. There is an answer phone service and all of that, but it's just what the mechanism is really. When I first started, and I got a card for each of the nurses with their phone numbers on, and I was simply told all of this stuff. And if you had a query or a question, just ring one of the nurses on their number on the card. And indeed I did, and I spoke to them, and they told me what was happening, what to do, and all of that, which was really handy.
So, do we think that's still happening? We're getting leaflets and information and guidance?
It doesn't seem to be as much now.
Right, okay, so we need to refresh on that, that's good. Okay, so if you were ringing in, what would you expect there? If you had a query, and what kind of turnaround time would you expect to come back to you? What would be reasonable? Same day. Yeah.
That's the problem. It needs to be the same day.
I know, that's why I'm asking the question. Yeah. Because obviously we have a team at the moment, and I raised an issue that Monday morning nobody's around, and I want to do something about that, and I want to know how. For me, Monday morning is probably more important than any other day of the week, because I think if you've had issues over the weekend, you'll be anxious to get hold of somebody, and I think that time is probably more important than any other time, although they're all important depending on your query. So, that's why I wanted to ask that question. Is there anything else you can think of that
you... Is there any value in emailing? Because I haven't found that's been... hasn't worked.
It has or it hasn't?
It hasn't, apart from emailing yourself, and then it did work very quickly.
So the only problem with email is about how much information you put in it as in terms of identifiers, because we're not supposed to respond to emails with patient identifiers on it. So if you put your name and then we're not encouraged to because it's a breach of confidentiality, even though you're freely doing it. A lot of people are nervous about doing that in case they get into trouble. But you could just put your query and your ID, your R2 number, because it only connects to this hospital and it's not. So if you did that, that's only one identifier, and I guess you could do that.
Got my name on the email.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, true.
I think probably the way round
do. Don't get me wrong. People do it all the time, but I think that's possibly why they don't.
But if they're not going to reply to it, it seems pointless emailing in at all.
See, Georgina used to say, if you're sending specimens by post,
to let you know,
email me to let me know so I can look out the result. That's what she said. But it doesn't seem to work now.
I don't think that's a problem, but I'm just wondering if some of them are a bit. I'm thinking of one of the consultants who she won't answer if it's got identifiers on it. I know for a fact she doesn't.
What we need then is an automatic response to say that if they're not going to be with the reason, that's the reason. So people aren't emailing in.
Yeah, that's true.
Or if they're not in that day.
Or holiday.
So you can email and then someone's on holiday and you're not going to get any reply for maybe a week.
I'd like ideally an NHS email link to the team so that your query goes direct to the team and is answered. That's what I would like. So if you'll just say nacqueries.nhs.uk, and you know that you can just email to that query and someone will respond to you. That would be a nice way of doing it, I think, because getting hold of people on the phone when we're in clinics and they're here, you know, it's not always easy, and it's frustrating for people if they've got to keep trying. So for me, if we could just tap into something like that and get a reply, I don't know how well that would.
We're giving out mobile phones numbers to everybody,
Yeah.
not just texting.
Yeah, well, that one text. I think that my in-laws are just
Yeah, yeah.
all over.
I think probably because it needs to be the way round is almost to say, right, we need to equip the patients with these are the ways to make contact. This is the telephone numbers,
Give them
email.
a whole list of
This is
options.
the content we
Yeah.
need.
Yeah.
You need to tell us this,
Yeah,
and this,
yeah,
and this is the way we respond.
Yeah.
Because if we know how to contact you in the right
Yeah,
way,
yeah.
it'll make the process more
Yeah.
efficient.
And if you know the key things to put in. that
Yeah,
get
because
the
I'm sure you
response.
must get
Yeah.
answer phone messages
Yeah,
which
yeah.
you can't act upon because we forgot there was anything vital, like who the hell we
Yeah,
are,
yeah.
or something.
One in particular.
Well,
yeah.
you know, yeah, got great on the answer machine, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So that seems to be quite a big hole, doesn't
Yeah,
it? That
yeah, yeah.
people can't email people. There's a bit of a
Yeah,
difficulty with
yeah.
everything
Yeah,
goes
so
through
like-
your answer phone,
so like
essentially.
Malcolm said, people need choices and,
Yeah.
and what will work for them. That's basically it, isn't it? So,
If
right,
you
that's
send
good.
a specimen of sputum, what should be the turnaround time?
Depends what it's been sent in for, because some
Well,
can
just
take.
from general infection.
Yeah, I think it's probably. I think it's 48 hours, but if we're trying to grow something, it'll take longer. I think it's a week or so.
Molds have been more like 10 days for a mold. I think.
Yeah.
See, we don't know when to start some antibiotics. Most of them have got rescue packs.
Yeah.
And then you're thinking, well, what shall I
We're
take?
supposed
Shall I
to get
take
a call.
amoxicillin? Shall I
If
take
it grows
amoxicillin?
anything, we're supposed to get a call. As soon as that result comes through, if there's something that needs acting on, and then to back to your GP and tell you to go to the GP. So that should happen automatically. And if it
But
doesn't,
you
we
need
to
someone
know
to be
that.
picking up that result.
Well, it comes through, the results are always checked daily by whoever you saw. They're always ticked off and they have to be electronically accepted. So that's something that happens electronically now. So the doctors have to go through all their clinic, all the patients they saw in clinic, authorise all the results, and then they get files. So that happens electronically. The minute they see one that's we've grown something, that will be flagged up and it usually goes to the nurses, and the nurses will fax to your GP and move you to tell you to go and get a prescription.
I don't think it happened in my case, because I brought one in on a Friday when I was coming here,
Right.
and I handed it in to somebody.
Okay.
And then I thought, well, probably by Tuesday I could find out. But then I think it got to Thursday or Friday before I started phoning around, and then somebody said to me, well, I'll look it up for you. Oh yes, you've grown so and so.
Right.
So I don't think that
So
system
the
works
system
there.
failed, yeah, because that's what should be happening. And I know when the nurses were off in the last summer when we lost Georgina and Debbie off, so it was a bit chaotic. I know for a fact that was the system because it got landed on my desk, so I know that was the system. That's what we were doing. So, but I'll chase that. I'll check that that's still the case.
Because I like to use here rather than my GPs,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
every time I sent a specimen over there, they would say malformisms only. And I couldn't believe it because I felt ill and my sputum was a disgusting colour.
Yeah.
So I just didn't believe it. So that's why I like to send it here.
Yeah.
Plus you also know what's going on about repeated infections and what's growing.
Yeah,
I think
like I
that's
say, it's good for us
important.
to have a record so we know.
Yeah.
Okay, so I won't,
So there's quite a lot to
I won't
work with there.
Stand in the way of Paul, but yeah, exactly. I will. But I've got one more little quick question
Yeah.
for you. We have overload at the moment, especially on a Wednesday, and I'm looking at you, Malcolm, because we're struggling to get patients in. I haven't put this to anyone other than you guys, so they'll all collapse when to see what I'm suggesting. But I just wanted your thoughts on the following: twilight clinics. Would it work for
What
people?
time is that? Sorry.
Well,
6
for me, I think, I think if the clinic was up to 8 o'clock at night, whether that's something that would work for people. I mean, I'm just putting ideas out there because people would miss traffic. I mean, it depends on where you're coming from, I know. People could come after work, so that's one option. The other is a Saturday. Someone's going to kill me for this.
Have you run this past the consultant?
I'm asking the patients first, and if they say it's a go-around.
Good plan, good plan.
Saturday clinics.
I'm happy with Saturday. I'm retired, so I'm lucky, but
Yeah. So broadly, yeah.
I go on. Is it the
Sunday?
Wednesday that's the problem?
Wednesday's a real problem, yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I'm
Friday's a problem as well. if I'm
I'm a
honest.
Wednesday. And
Yeah,
you're a
yeah.
Wednesday. I'm
Oh,
not.
yeah.
So, yeah, no problems with that. Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the reason I've asked this is because some places do twilight clinics and do Saturdays and Sundays, and the general feeling is that at weekends some people would rather do that because they can get parked, they can get in and out, and actually it doesn't really matter to them. So it's quite, the only downside of that is if you needed CT scans and things like that. Although they do CT
CTs are available at weekend.
Yeah, so.
It looks to be okay.
Well, obviously we'd have to look into that, but I just wanted to know whether people would be horrified at the thought of coming into the hospital on a Sunday. But I know that people I've spoken to have actually found it better, and it's worked, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it'll vary by individual, of course, because I mean, I'm retired, so I can come in whenever.
Yeah.
But I think the other way of looking at this, we're grateful to have a service that we can access.
Yeah.
And if we've got to be slightly inconvenienced because we've got to come on an evening or a weekend, I can't see that standing in the way.
Yeah.
The big plus is less traffic and easier parking.
And getting parked,
Yeah, so that's
and
big.
getting seen probably quicker as well because it'll be quieter, you see.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I have suggested the twilight clinic on Saturday in the past. But it was like,
What did they look like?
well, yeah.
They all go pale.
And I wouldn't have to watch daytime TV, I think.
Yeah, but I just think that would be a good way forward. We've got about 18 people that cannot get in on the clinics at the minute, and we've actually expanded that slightly. So
Don't we have to provide 7-day a week though, ultimately? Mr. Hunt has his way.
That's what Mr. Hunt said, and I'm just so that's interesting. Thank you for that. That's great. I'll go back
Brilliant.
to that.
She does that.
Right, we're running a bit late, and Paul's waiting to do his talk. Would you be happy if we did your talk at 1:45, and then we get us 10 minutes?
I really don't mind what you.
Okay, so we'll do a short break, come back 1:45, and then Paul would take us through to 1:45. Okay, on to the second part of the show. Always get the best stuff in the second half of things, have you noticed?
Oh, yeah.
Right, Paul Berger is our lead researcher for all the work that we do, coming from the tissue samples that we collect from clinic and all that sort of thing. So he's in an extremely good position to tell us about what advances and what projects we're carrying out to help people with Aspergillosis. With your help, we asked for help getting a big grant last year, and these grants nowadays you don't get, particularly unless you get a lot of patients saying yes, we want this to happen. 30 of you, over 30 people.
More than 30, yeah.
More than 30 people responded to support this project, and lo and behold, Paul is now going to tell us what happened with that project application.
Indeed. It is crucial to get the support of real people. When you go to these funding bodies, they don't have a lot of money, and we're asking for a lot of money. So it's really crucial for us to get, the funding bodies to understand that this is a real problem that affects real people, and they have real concerns. So letters of support, such as the ones we had for this project, are really crucial for us. And I wanted to feed back a little bit. I know some of you wrote some of those letters, and a variety of others around the world have also written letters of support for this project. So we've not started this work yet, so we normally talk about research we've done and results we've got. This is something that's about to start. We think it's quite exciting and a really very important project for everybody around the world who works on Aspergillus fumigatus. It's the Aspergillus fumigatus whole genome knockout project, so that sounds a bit maybe complicated. I'm going to try and simplify that as much as I can. Aspergillus, if you look at the bottom half of this slide, it's a fungus. It's a very, very complicated thing, okay? We don't really know how it works. We've got some ideas, but we really don't know very much about it. We know some things, okay. We'd like to know more about it because it's complicated. I mean, if you look at this flyer, you can see that the fungus does different things in different individuals, okay? Different types of growth, and we don't really know why, okay? We know that we can treat it with some types of drug, but not with other types of drug, and we don't really know why. And we'd like to develop new drugs that work against this fungus as well, okay? So you're wondering why there's a Volkswagen Beetle up there, aren't you? Volkswagen Beetle is one of the last production cars that wasn't managed by an electronic system. So it's a purely mechanical device. Okay? Now it so happens that there's about as many working parts or moving parts in that Volkswagen Beetle as there are in our fungus. About 10,000 individual parts in each one of these. Okay? Now suppose we set out to find out how our car works. We know very little about cars. Well, I know very little about cars. I get the feeling there's, in this case, the engine's at the back, but something that makes it go, right? And then there's some wheels, and you can steer it a bit. And there's a bit you sit on, but that's not really an awful lot of knowledge about the car. And that's probably about where we are with Aspergillus. How do we find out how that works? How would I go about, as a scientist, how would I go about finding out how that worked? It's effectively the same way as I go about finding out how this works. Okay? I'd take one and I'd start to take pieces out and say, well, does it still work? Okay. If I took one of the windows out, yes, it'd still go, wouldn't it? It'd be fine. It'd be perfectly good as a car. It's self-propelling. It goes around the corner. No problems with it whatsoever. You can drive to work in it. Might be a bit cold, but it'll get you there, right? But if I took a wheel off, it wouldn't. So some parts are essential and some parts are not essential. Similarly, with a fungus, some parts of the fungus are essential and some parts of the fungus are not essential. So the essential parts, if we take or stop one of the parts of the fungus working with a drug, it kills it. That's what we're trying to achieve here, finding out the essential parts. There's not much Aspergillus in this talk at all. So very, very complicated thing, a car, isn't it? I mean, that's just, that's not even including the engine, really, and there's even more parts when you look at the engine. So, as a scientist working with a fungus, we want a methodical approach to finding out how the fungus works. So we need to look at every single part, okay, to find out which ones are important. Quite difficult, isn't it? It's a lot of bits, okay? So you can imagine taking each bit out of the car and saying, does the car still go? Does the car still go? Does the car still go around corners? Okay? Is it comfortable? Okay? Lots of questions we can ask. But there's an awful lot of pieces, right? This is a puzzle with a lot of pieces. Similarly, the fungus, about the same number of parts. We'd have to take each part out. Now, the parts in a fungus are genes and proteins. And our method for taking parts out of the fungus is to take away the genes. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that in detail, but it's quite easy to do, and we can run it on a kind of production line basis. So our project is to take out the pieces of the fungus that make it work, the genes, in a methodical manner, every single one of them, and see which ones stop it working. Find out which ones are essential. When we know which ones are essential, we can design drugs to stop it working. Okay? When we want to find out how the fungus copes in different environments and different types of lung, so for example, how does the car go around a corner, right, when the road bends? We can say, well, what happens when we take the steering wheel away? What happens when we take this gene away? Okay? And we can find out how the fungus responds to different conditions in the same way, by methodically taking every single working piece of the fungus away, every single gene. Now, you can't take them all out at the same time. Otherwise you just get a mess, really, and nothing works, and really, we don't know what happened here. Which part of that car has stopped working? Quite a few, right? It's not drivable. We don't really get any information from this. So what we need to do, instead of trying to make lots of changes at once, is to take thousands of cars. So we've got 10,000 parts, right? So we need 10,000 cars, and from each one we take a different piece. Now you may say, Paul, that's idiotic. British Leyland did this 40 years ago. But we're going to do it methodically, right? So every one of these cars, every strain of fungus we develop has a single well-defined piece missing, and they're all different. So we're going to generate not 10,000 cars with a piece missing, but 10,000 strains of fungus, each one with a different gene missing. Genomes look like this. It's a stretch of DNA, okay? This is what controls everything in the fungus, and there's a list of genes down here, so we're methodically going to go through this and say, take that one out, then the next strain we'll take that one out, and so on and so on and so on, until we've got everything made, okay? So you can imagine in the factory, this is the original Volkswagen factory, you can see the production line coming down here. Somebody sat in there, there's somebody sat in there. In this case, it's going to be my colleague Mike Bromley, who can make these gene knockouts with robotic ease. And everything that comes down here is going to be tested. Does it still go? Can it go around corners? Is it comfortable to drive? Does it use a lot of petrol? So on and so forth.
There from the left, there's a knockout mutation.
That's an essential one. Okay. So we're going to do this with fungi and with Aspergillus fumigatus. The application was successful, as Graham has said. Mike Bromley, Daniela Del Neri, and myself are heading the team who will perform this analysis. It's a 4-year project, so we're starting January of next year, and it'll run through to 2022. By which time we expect to have all of the genes knocked out, and we expect to have studied the function of all of the genes in the fungus as well. So by this time, we're really going to know a lot about how the fungus works. Okay? This is a project which is international, so as well as writing to patients to ask for their support, we've written to all of the other research groups in the world who work on Aspergillus fumigatus, because by the nature of research, we often overlap, and there's a lot of time wasted because we're trying to do the same thing. It's not really deliberately, it's not really a competitive situation, but you know, inevitably we tend to do some of the same things and develop some of the same technology. This whole genome knockout will provide a resource worldwide for all of the Aspergillus fumigatus research groups. They will all have access to this completely freely, and it will advance their research probably by 3 or 4 years for each group. So this is a resource that will go worldwide. It's still going to be based in Manchester, but it will have benefits in every country in the world and in every Aspergillus lab throughout the world where this is used. So this is by way really of just being a little bit of explanation about what we were writing to you about, and a sort of thank you to say, you know, the support has been absolutely essential for us to get this money. So it's just short of £900,000 the Wellcome Trust has given us to do this work. It will be a tremendous achievement. It's the Manhattan project of fungal disease, really. We hope in a few years to be coming back and telling you about what we're finding. Project's led by Mike Bromley here, who occasionally speaks at these meetings, and Daniela and myself are his assistants. So that's all I wanted to say today, really. I told you it'd be quick.
Yep.
Don't think you were expecting quite so much Volkswagen Beetle, but
Yeah. So, you're going to generate maybe at least 10,000 strains.
Yeah.
How do you store those?
they go to freezer.
Is it just one freezer or backup freezer?
No, well, we have backup freezers yet. So what happens, the process is quite complicated. We're going to generate these in the university in Manchester. We have plates which are about this big, where we can grow 100 fungi. So you can imagine 100 of these plates. That's not actually so big, is it? It's not such a huge volume. So we can put that in a -80 freezer and store it quite easily. But then we're replicating it, so it's going to go out to Public Health England, who are going to, manage the distribution this library, we've got a library of strains. They're going to manage the distribution of this set of strains from Portland down. They're going to just, they'll post it worldwide to people who want it. And it's also going to go over to the States. We hope, they're applying for money at the moment, to the Fungal Genetics Stock Centre there,
Yes.
who will also be able to distribute all of these isolates.
So in itself, you're knocking one gene out of us, and then you're attempting to make that grow, so you can freeze it.
Yeah.
What happens to the ones that don't grow?
Well, it's like the cars that don't work, right?
Yeah, that's what they're on the left. Yeah.
We try them in several different ways, okay? If we're happy that
Yeah.
that would mean that the gene we knocked out was essential, okay? Like the part of the car would be essential, part of the engine, for example.
So not only are you providing a search, this is actually an active research.
We find out an awful lot about the fungus while we're doing this, yeah. And it allows every other lab in the world to rapidly also test a whole range of different conditions.
And what sort of conditions are you going to test? Because you can test them, ideally for this population of people, you want to test them as they attempt to grow in lung tissue.
Yeah. The first thing is will it grow? Okay. If it can't grow, okay, that's a very interesting gene. If taking it away stops the fungus growing. First of all, that's a drug target. Okay. That's what we want to do with the drug, is stop the fungus growing. So first thing we get is a whole list of genes. We think there's going to be about 1,500 out of the whole 10,000 that do this. Okay. So that's the first resource we hope to develop with this. We're going to look for drug resistance. So we're interested in the ways that the fungus becomes resistant to drug. That's the second thing we'll find out. It's a whole library, because this is everything that's in the genome. So by doing this, we find out everything. Okay, this is not a study where we go out and try and find things randomly. We've finally got methodical about it, and we're going to really crunch the numbers on it.
So you won't be going for genes that are drug targets. It'll just be shot.
Not in this case, because we're going to knock everything out. I mean, we know quite a lot about that already, but because we're going to knock everything out, our best approach is to be naive and say, well, we don't know anything. It's like, I don't know how the car works. It's a similar kind of thing. And we say, well, okay, let's be naive. Let's test everything the same, and then find out, because we may be surprised. I think we're likely to be surprised, actually. And then we're going to look for things that change the way the fungus grows under certain conditions. Okay, can it grow in sputum? Okay,
Yes.
Is it sensitive to oxygen level, for example, and so on. Things that are relevant to the different types of
So
disease.
we talked last month. We talked about the new paper that indicates that neutrophils trigger apoptosis.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll be picking up those genes?
We'll certainly be picking up apoptosis genes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But presumably there's another level of complexity, which is the way the genes work together.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
take out a gene, and
Yeah.
you can see the effect of moving that gene. But then there's a whole set of combinations, and just 10,000 genes to start with. I guess it's an awful lot of combinations.
Absolutely. Yeah. So the analysis, becomes more complicated. For the genes we find that are of interest, we know how a lot of them interact with each other. We don't know the whole story about everything, but we know quite a bit about how they interact. So the genes cluster, for example, you think about an engine in a car, okay? All of those bits are together. Now, we know that quite a lot of genes work together in that manner, right? So if we find one of those that, for example, is essential, we can start to look at the genes that interact with it and work with it, and say, well, this is a process that we're looking at rather than a single gene. So we tend to think these days in terms of processes and systems within the cell. Okay, and you can imagine this as being, engine, brakes, gearbox, hydraulic system. In the same, carrying my beetle analogy to its desperate limit. But
Yeah, no.
So we're trying to find the brakes, essentially.
well, brakes would be good, yes, but we're trying to find things that stop it working. Yeah,
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, to your knowledge, different patients present with different forms of Aspergillosis fungatus strain, and this cluster of genes you were talking about, how does that relate to different types of the disease which is presenting itself, like CPA or
Yeah.
AVP?
Okay. So there's a couple of things we're going to do here. One of which is we're not just going to use a single strain, we're going to use a couple of strains. So we'll get more information about differences. But what we have done previously is we've genome sequenced a lot of strains, and we don't really find anything that makes them virulent in a particular scenario. Okay, they all seem to be fairly equal to each other. So they all seem to have the ability to cause disease in various different scenarios. And a lot of the differences you see are down to differences in the lung. Okay, so you can imagine scarring from previous TB allows a little bit of growth there, and you can get a cavitation or an aspergilloma. In an asthmatic individual, you can have mucilage in the lungs, and you can get growth within the mucilage, and you can get ABPA, and so on and so forth. But it's not so much down to the fungus, okay? Mostly down to the person who's hosting the fungus. Okay. Which, and we also have information on this, but not today. Well, I don't think that's
60-40?
No.
You don't believe that?
No.
Sorry, it was discovered about 2009 that Aspergillus fumigatus actually exists as male and female, if you like, mating type 1, mating type 2. And in the last week there was a paper released that showed, I think, mating type 1 is far more likely it's more pathogenic, causes more disease than mating type 2, about 60-40.
Just about, yes. I'm not convinced.
All it now is now denigrating the entire research.
No, absolutely not. There's a lovely piece of research, but yeah.
Interesting. Any more questions for Paul?
The next step, I'm now assuming after you found out from this knockout study, how are you going to test? Because knocking down the gene in the lab is completely different from say, developing something to stop that fungus in human?
Well, in terms of developing a drug, actually, no, it isn't. Developing a drug that drug should work in the lab, okay, on a plate, right? Sometimes those drugs do not translate to usable drugs in humans. However, the other way around it's not true. Anything that works in human will certainly work in the lab. Okay. So what we'll find probably is too much, and we'll have to narrow it down. But that's okay. And there are ways of doing these tests and taking these compounds and these targets through to drug discovery. And it's a long, complicated, and very well established process. You can try it out in mice, for example, and so on and so forth. Many of which, it's a long process before any of these drugs get to human, and they've been extensively tested by that time.
So, after 4 years, do you expect, if the results of this study come to fruition, are we expecting something in 5 years, 10 years, or something?
After 4 years, or after 3 years, when we finished the knockouts, I am expecting to have a great deal of knowledge about available drug targets for Aspergillus fumigatus. Now, there's two things there. One, this is a resource for drug discovery, and groups around the world and industry around the world and all sorts of people will use this. Okay? So it will massively potentiate our search for new drugs. The second thing is that many of these genes and proteins, because this is fungus is rather close to mammals in evolutionary terms. Okay? It's the closest group that it's related to. Many of the things that we find in the fungus are going to be the same as things we find in humans. So there are many drugs already existing in humans that are potentially usable against fungi if we only knew which targets to look for. So I think we'll find some of those as well.
So there's a couple of extraordinary things in this thing. You're spending £1 million and you're not charging anyone anything for any of these clones. That's really that's a non-American approach. That's only made possible presumably because the Wellcome Trust make it that way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a condition of the, well, it wasn't really a condition of the grant. We wrote it into the grant to say that we're going to make this as freely available as we can. Obviously, people will have to pay a little bit for postage and that kind of thing. Yeah, if you start charging people for it, I mean, what do you charge? It becomes a bit silly. You don't want to make a profit out of it. Who gets the money?
If it's a knockout gene,
it's not my job. It's not my job to make money out of this. The best thing is to make it freely available so everybody can use it, then everybody can work on it throughout the world, and
And Welcome originates with a massive grant from their benefactor, and one of his major issues was the results of the money that he spends in science were to be freely available to everybody.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to Mr. Welcome.
The Wellcome Trust is a
50
charitable
years ago?
institution.
Maybe 50 years ago.
It's, yeah, it's a good
Coming
one.
from the Welcome Foundation, the
That's
Welcome
right, yeah,
company.
yeah.
So not all of these drug companies are dedicated to making lots and lots
Yeah,
of money.
I mean, we're not a drug company. That's the first thing I'd say. You know, and we're not very well placed. And Mike Bromley has some experience in this, so he's the best placed of all of us. But you know, we're not a drug company, so we don't have the facilities to go through this long process to bring a drug to market. It would cost us a lot of money, and we're not in the position to do that kind of gambling, because you pay 20 million to take a compound through, and some of them fail. So actually, you need to be spending 100 million or 200 million. And some companies, you know, GSK, something like this, they've got the money, they can do this. We don't, and the university is not there to gamble with.
There's lots of small groups who will take a gamble.
Yeah.
And maybe 1 in 3 will hit the jackpot.
Absolutely, and that's why you put it out there, you make it equally available to everybody. And I mean, the thing is that's drug targets, which have commercial value ultimately. Yes. But there's everything else in there is also scientifically valuable. So yes. We need to make that available to researchers with more academic interests throughout the world.
And scientifically, 10,000 gene knockouts.
Yeah, it's a
gene
very.
knockout used to be a PhD project.
Yes.
3 years to do one.
Yeah.
How on earth do you do 10,000 in 4 years?
We developed years ago, when Mike and I were working here in the ERC, we developed, or Mike principally developed this, a rapid method for doing this. Again, in these plates with 96 wells, and you can make 96 at a time. It's quite difficult to do, but Mike's extremely skilled at this kind of work. So we'll make them in batches of 100, and some of those are going to fail, so we have to go back and do some again, and so on and so forth. There's a lot of design work and a lot of preliminary work you need to do for each one of these things. But again, we've automated the software, and we know what to do to design.
Robotically, almost.
We're not actually going to use robots. We do have robots that will do this work. We're probably not actually going to use robots to make them, because it's a little bit hands-on. For the analysis downstream, we probably will use robots to plate these things out on all sorts of different conditions to see what they do. Yeah.
Wow.
It's a very strange mould in that it has various stages in its life cycle. It can become a solid, a hard solid, spidery.
Yes.
It spreads via spores and breaks up into millions of tiny little pieces. It's a very strange substance.
It is, yeah. I mean, most of those processes are common to a lot of fungi, but yeah, they do a lot of different things. And most of these processes, you talk about spores and breaking up and the way it grows, the growth habit, growing out as hyphae, filamentous, or as a mass. Okay, these are controlled genetically. A lot of these processes, and these genes are what is doing the controlling. So by removing these, we hope to really gain a lot of insight into these processes. Certainly, we know about sporulation. We'll know about its ability to grow as a hyphae and so on and so forth. We'll know those straight away. Yeah.
Any more questions? Just remains to thank Paul very much for an extremely informative talk, and please note that this is the only known photograph of Paul in existence. So I shall be taking that out. Then you've got the phones, get them out now and take a picture. It might be worth something in a few years.
No.
Okay, so thank you very much, Paul.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, we have 10 minutes. Probably fill 10 minutes. What were we talking about? Oh, no, we could do that for the last 10 minutes. The last session. That's not one. last month, we talked about ways to get more people to come into this meeting, because maybe 40 or 50 will come in over the year, but we've got 1,500 people that go through the clinic every year. So we're not bringing too many people in. A lot more people listen and watch online and watch the recordings. Hundreds of people watch the recordings. What we'd really like to, we really like to attract more people in, because the recordings and the streamings are only really, we know only about half of our patients can access those because they don't have computers and stuff. So one of the suggestions was, in every session like this, we come up with a number of things that are of interest, basic interest to everybody. Reminders about aspects of having aspergillosis. And what we came up with was 50 things that a new person coming in here might want to know about the service, or about aspergillosis, or anything to do with what we deal with. Okay. So if you imagine you've never been here before, what would you like us to talk about? What sort of things would you like reminders about? Or is there any particular information that you don't know? You've only just been diagnosed with aspergillosis, and you think that we should be able to tell you. Rachel's bits of information are probably 3 of those things that we need to know, and Beth's bits of information are another one, and how you, what's available to you in the PIP disability application, that type of thing. And I just thought it's worth asking yourselves, what other things do you think?
It would be useful perhaps to break that 50 things down into 2 or 3 headings, because it seems to me that the things you need to know if you knew, one is the workings of the clinic.
Workings of the clinic, yes. So we started that today with putting faces to names,
exactly, yeah,
and a bit about the roles,
yeah.
But we really need a more complete picture,
Yeah.
and go after the medics.
There might then be a heading around just general information about the condition, so
Yes.
we can be sure that new people have got a proper understanding of
So that relates to the stuff
which
that Rachel was
relates
doing.
to,
Yeah.
to that stuff. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's probably something about the tests that we're subjected to.
Yes.
What are the blood tests? What happens? What do they mean?
Yes.
What happens to the sputum? What are the time frames? What are they looking for? How
Yes.
does it all work?
That's quite a complex.
Yeah, there might be a way of making that
Yeah. Yeah.
just.
Yeah.
No, maybe separating it up into
Separating out the
individual
bits.
tests.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then it seems to me there's a heading around treatment.
Yes.
So, what are you likely to be treated with?
Yes.
And I know these things get discussed when you're in front of the doctor, but you know, I think we all know the amount of information people take in that circumstances.
Absolutely.
So, what are the treatments, the side effects issues, the duration of treatment, the objectives of treatment? We're not curing anybody, typically. We're managing the thing. Because one of the treatments is the nebulized amphotericin, there's a whole issue around that and what that means practically for those who get involved with that. So, it seems to me there's some useful stuff for new people to know about that.
So it's every sort of little nugget of information that reflects the contact that you have with the service, essentially.
Contact numbers when things go wrong.
Yeah, I mean that's in that call it emergency situation. What do you do?
Yes, that's true. Well, that sort of comes under greeting new patients and with a sort of information pack. That we know, like Chris has gone. Chris has been driving at that we want to reinforce the principle that every new person gets a nurse's contact number, gets information from these type of leaflets. All these are laminated examples of the leaflets that we should be giving out in the clinic, depending on what you've got. They want me to actually develop an A5 version of these leaflets to give out, because the nurses think those are a bit unwieldy to carry about. So I should probably try and do that, although not put a lot of time at the moment. So you would get that. What else? This 7-day-a-week approach sounds really good to me. At the moment, if you have an issue outside of 9 to 5, It's not that easy to get a contact from the centre because we've all gone home. You can contact the hospital, who can contact one of our consultants. That's sort of 2 jumps, and you're going to have to wait for the information coming back, which is not so great. So twilight clinics might actually help that in principle, which I quite like the idea of. So yeah, I think that's also, these are all things coming from you that we can throw back at the clinicians and say, look, these are the ways to improve the clinic. We've got a new consultant just started. We've got 1 or 2 new ones coming in as well. So this service is getting bigger, and we need to give them more to do, I think.
And then I think you've got the lifestyle things
Yeah.
you should consider, the things that we put in the quarterly newsletter. And those are sort of things that certainly should be part of our 50.
Well, one of the points from last time was that we need to make people more aware on clinic day that this is happening. So I've adjusted the newsletters. In fact, I did do one for today, but it didn't get given out. So it says clinic today, clinic November the 3rd. It's the top thing on the paper that everyone should get. And then I do a little piece of paper for the day, and I've just put that out today, saying it's happening today. You're welcome to come down, get a sandwich, get some hot drink, and just come and see what we're talking about.
I think the other thing is the sources of information, the different computer websites, support groups or whatever they are out there.
Yes, yeah, that's definitely. I think what people tend to find that themselves, and they type in Aspergillosis and they get.
Yeah, but
we can point them directly to it.
Hit with, you've got Aspergillosis. What does that mean?
Yeah.
It's fungus. Well, I'm a toadstool. You know, I mean, you're starting at that point, really. You want people to
Yes.
build on that.
I'm reading a report from the New England Journal right now, which was carried out a couple of weeks ago, which is about listening to the patient's voice, is what it calls quite patronisingly. Most of what that seems to be about is listen to each individual patient, because each individual one has a different need. And we don't necessarily want to be scoring clinical target hits on clinical targets. We want to be scoring hits on quality of life targets for each individual. I'm sort of reading more of that. I've actually given that report out on Facebook. If you want to go and have a look at it, and I'll do that again next week. Say to me. Sorry.
I'm new to the group.
Yeah.
And I was told I've got the fungus in the sputum and the blood.
Yeah.
But it's within limits.
Right.
That means they're not going to treat it.
Right.
So
What does limits mean?
That's what I've got to ask Professor Jones next time I see him. It doesn't need treatment if it's within limits.
Yeah.
So they're not giving me any form of treatment.
And does that concern you?
Well, I've been told it's everywhere.
Yes.
We're in the National Trust, we're out walking through the gardens, the forests. I've had to stop doing that.
Yeah.
You know, if it's everywhere. Or is it just when you go to something that's got the mould on and you breathe it in, so you've got to be very careful.
And it is everywhere, but at different levels. So if you're swishing through dried leaves in a forest, and there's quite a lot.
Yeah.
But right now we're breathing some in now, but not much, hopefully.
Yeah.
And with most people, the only way to tell is that if you're breathing, you can spot certain circumstances, like going through a forest. That's liable to be not good.
Right.
So if you do it, your breathing will get a bit tighter and a bit more difficult.
Right.
And you learn as you go along. I mean, the patients would be better telling you about this than I am.
Because I've got paranoid.
Well, that's it.
I don't want to stop. I don't want to walk up our lane because it's all leaves. So I've gotten a lot better. Staying in and just going in the cart at shops and.
Well, maybe that suits you. No. This is a bad time of year because of all the leaves.
Yeah, October.
So as soon as we start getting frosts, the amount of fungus in the air, amount of Aspergillosis in the air just goes right down.
We've got the mass now, so I can go back in my garden because I love my big garden. I've got a big garden anyway. Got a lot to do.
Have
He's been doing it on his own.
have you received the instruction thing on which masks to buy?
Yeah,
Got the
there's a
FFP3
number. Yeah, that's it.
right.
Got that. So,
A lot of
yeah.
people find those great, but they
Yeah.
get damp. So if you get the
right.
type with a valve,
It's got-
so as you
it's
breathe
got a
out,
circle in it.
yeah, those are better.
Oh, good.
And then other people have issues when they breathe into it and they steam up the glasses while they're
Oh,
working.
right. Yeah, well.
And there are different people who
Yes.
recommend different masks and that type of thing if they have that problem.
And it's coming here also, you talk to other people with the
Yeah.
disease, and you learn all sorts of little tips.
Well, nice.
Well, that's
got flooded.
50
That's
tips
very
is what we're trying to come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It got flooded 2 years ago with the bad floods, and we've been going up to this house that he'd bought, very old. He's been doing loads of dusty work. I've been there, hoovering, cleaning, and then he got flooded. I kept away when the machines were in, but it was never deep cleaned properly.
Yes. So
And
there's quite
I
possibly a
think
lot of dust and mould still
He's
there.
took it on board, what I've got. He's gone around his house. He's found some on his big chunky table legs.
Really? How deep was the flood? Was it
It was
covered the?
18 inches.
Wow, that's a proper
There's a
flood.
river at the back. It's not
Yeah.
flooded for a long, long time.
So they've dried it out.
Well,
Have they
he
taken?
doesn't seem to understand. It's you've got to keep the dust down.
Yeah,
He's got 4 little ones running around.
yeah,
It builds up. I can see, and I'm allergic to dust mite as well.
yeah.
So he doesn't understand the thick dust and condensation. That's when it will grow.
It's a
He
beautiful,
thinks he's eradicated it.
beautiful
but he's
medium
got
for
to keep
mould
on
is
top of it,
dust.
hasn't
Yeah, you have. You've got to get rid of all the one thing.
he? And he's got a cough.
Well, Malcolm Richardson, who goes out to houses measuring mould
Right.
levels.
Will he?
He will do if you want to relate your home to your condition, your respiratory problems. We can Prof Denning can get him to come out to your home.
I think my home's pretty good because having dust mite from about 34, I know what I've got to keep.
Yes, and it's
And I've
dust.
got the special hoover.
Well, he goes round, and the most consistent thing he sees is a home with loads of clutter and loads of dust.
That's my son.
Yeah,
He's
that's
divorced with 4 children.
well, that's it, and that's those where they get the worst mould. Unless they're 18 inches deep in water, and that's the worst mould you can possibly get.
And it's 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's the last 2 letters I've had Professor Jones within limits.
Right.
And the
Well,
first time I had it was years ago
Yeah.
after scraping
Yes.
wallpaper in an old house. But he treated it and I thought I'd never have it again. I thought that was it, you know.
So you developed a respiratory problem, you went to your doctor and he gave you some antifungal.
No, I came here.
Came here?
You have a blood test twice a year when I
Right.
see him.
Okay. So that when they say it's gone up but it's within limits, it means that they don't want to give you an antifungal because
yeah.
there are all sorts of sort of side effects and things that you can get with one of these. They're quite strong drugs. So they can't justify giving it to you yet because they don't want to give you all those side effects.
Yeah, because I wasn't coughing up on sputum all
But
the
if you
time.
get worse, come straight back.
Yeah.
They may give it to you.
seems to be easy now because I've not been with someone and I'm not
Right.
now. I'm isolated myself.
Get your son to visit you. That's the answer. Instead of you going there.
It's not just round the corner. That's
You're going to tell me he's in Australia now, aren't
you know, he has visited us.
It's a bit best.
you? Okay, well, we're out of time. We've finished. I have lots more things I could talk about, but we've run out of time. I'll have to do it next time. Next time it is. Yes, hang on. Let's go. Blah 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 blah. There you go. Friday the 1st December is our Christmas quiz, and we have
So,
three previous champions in the room.
so fancy dress is obligatory, is it?
I think so. I think. But not for staff. This is what we're playing for. The David McIntyre Trophy. This is a much prized thing. So been very well polished, as I can see. Very nice.
I didn't drop it on the way in. No, last time.
So it's fun. You just come and have a bit of fun. We have in the past asked quite a few questions about aspergillosis and things, but we're thinking this year we're just going to do mostly fun questions.
It's like a fun quiz.
In fact, yes.
Where's the fun in that?
And we may even buy you a free mince pie or something like that. So do come if you want. Just an informal thing. Just come and have some fun. We used to be on the 3rd Friday of the month, which is why which was a lot more appropriate for a Christmas crib on the 1st of December. Well, we moved, so that's why it's quite so early in December. So yes, do come and see us next time. Yes, that's it. So, thank you all for coming, and a very safe journey home. I have your car parking tickets over here. If you haven't done this, but you've parked in our car parks, it'll cost you £10 to leave, unless you've got one of these. And these will say, these are